welcome to another interesting episode of the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. I am Lillian Agbeigbe, your host of this program. On the Diaspora Dialogue series, we are talking to members of the diaspora, enriching our lived experiences by the beautiful narratives of each special story. Today, my guest is the phenomenal, beautiful, absolutely stunning, and oh, you must forgive me if I seem to be going on and on and on because I have a special personal connection with our guest today. She's none other than my spiritual mother and my adopted mother, Mrs. Felicia Olaiton OMONI. Grandma, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Lillian.
Yes, great, Grandma. So we're talking to members of the diaspora, Grandma. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know, just give us a little bit about your background, princess, and growing up in Nigeria. Let's meet you, Grandma.
Thank you for inviting me to this diaspora dialogue. I came to America in the year 1979 with my husband and my son, a year old at the time. We came purposely to study. That's what we thought in 1979. And we thought in 4 years we will be done and return back to Nigeria. However, God has a better plan ahead that we were not aware of them. We finished in California in 1982, and God said, I'm transporting you to Texas. And we came to Texas in the year 1982 to continue our study. And by the grace of God, we finished our study. My husband graduated in the seminary in the year 1982 and moved ahead to continue his PhD at the University of Denton, which is a state university. And I started my education at the Dallas Baptist University. And of course, by then, we've been blessed with 2 more children. We have 3 at the time. And I started working. Lo and behold, we started the church in the year 1987 by the divine grace of God, initiated by God himself. And before we knew it, things started changing. Well, like we said, we still want to go back to Nigeria. In 1992, when my husband finished, we did everything in our own power, with our own divine planning, I would say. We wanted to go back by all means. And we had the plan because we wanted to go back to the seminary to go and teach and to go and work. But God said, my plan is not your plan. I have a plan for you. My plan is for you to stay in America. But we struggle with that plan. We kept on working in our own will, in our own way. By the time we knew what God was doing, my husband had what we call liver cirrhosis, unknowing to us what is going to be at the end of the tunnel. It led to surgery in that was in 2006, which will have led to his death. But by the grace of God and by the divine intervention, he made it through.
Wow.
And here we are in the year 2024, still in America.
Wow.
With our daughter, and we are with our granddaughter, and with everybody still alive.
Amen.
I mean, we cannot tell it all what the Lord has done for us. It's a long story, but I tried to cut it short and to make it as brief as I could.
Wow, that's a very interesting story. Very interesting story. Thank you for sharing. And this is a different perspective because I like the fact that, it was like the Lord's leading. You were very bent on going back to Nigeria, because a lot of people, like, once they leave Nigeria, sometimes they're like, I'm never going back. But when you came, your intention was actually to go back, and you really tried to go back.
Yes.
What was the attraction? So for the people who leave Nigeria who say, let me just get my feet in that America and you will never see me again. What was the attraction for you? Why were you like really entertaining the thought of going back to Nigeria at that time?
Well, we left seminary in 1979. I was working in the seminary. My husband was working when he graduated from seminary. He was working in this library. I was working in the office. When we left the seminary, we were made to know that they want us to come back to work in the seminary.
Okay.
So when we got here, the pressure or the interest kept coming that we want you to come back. And all the indication was, please come back.
Okay.
And we did not want to disappoint. Of course, we had interest in going back ourselves, especially me.
Yeah.
And because of the trust they have in us, we do not want to disappoint them. We do not want to disappoint God. And of course, Nigeria was very good in those days. And because we lived in the seminary when we left, the life in the seminary, and particularly where the seminary was in Ogbomoso, was a very quiet city, was a safe city. So there was nothing to be scared or afraid of. So we don't see any reason why we shouldn't go back and give back to what the Lord has done for us.
Yeah.
In fact, while we were here, they tried, one of the missionaries in Nigeria at the time had to stay extra year waiting for us to get back.
Wow.
So that thinking that we will come back until it was obvious that we were not going to come back at the time they expected us to come back.
Wow. So that's another narrative that sometimes when you come abroad, you don't come for yourself. You came on behalf of the church. And so there was that commitment to go back to the church. So now you have stayed, or you were staying. What were some of your cultural experiences like? How was it? Did you really living abroad and living in Nigeria? What were like some surprises or some expectations from those two different experiences?
Well, having lived in Ogbomoso coming back, I think we lived two different cultures, even while we were in Nigeria.
Okay.
Because we live among missionaries most of the time in the seminary in Ogbomoso. Most of the people in the compound were missionaries from America.
Okay.
So we've always lived American-Nigerian life while we were in Nigeria. So we still brought that culture with us when we came to America. And so it stayed with us, and we grew up, I personally grew up with that sort of culture, even growing up in Nigeria. And so coming here, of course, I grew up in my native town until I was 13 or 14. So I knew the culture very well too. And that's part of me still stay. And definitely you can't take that away from, no matter how old or how culture you adapt to new one. So I still have that in me. But for the grace of God and for knowing Christ, I still maintain that Christ culture is always above any culture, no matter what.
Amen.
And that also is at the back of my mind, that no matter what culture I grew up with, when I brought Christ into my life, that also supersedes any culture that I might have. And so I let that supersede any culture that I have before.
So whether it's Nigeria, whether it's America, Christ is really the anchor for you. That's awesome. And that may be the thing, but as you were raised in Nigeria and then you came with Femi when he was 1, and then you had Ebon you're here. What would you say did you have some challenges, or were there some differences, or was it that Christ culture in terms of raising the children and your experience of or knowledge of raising children traditionally and both cultures? How did that work for you?
I don't know about raising children traditionally. The only thing about traditional in raising them was not giving them English name. Because my children didn't have any English name at all. And maybe that is part of the culture in me, because I believe in English name is not part of the name I want them to grow up with, even though when they were growing up, they tried to give themselves a name that is English, which they eventually find out it's not the custom they also want to be noted for. They don't want to be associated with that. They want people to know who they really are. And so raising them up, we didn't have any really culture that stand out as, okay, this is how you do it in Nigeria, this is how you should do it at home. So they will go out and find out that there's nothing different from what they do at home and what they do outside. Definitely the language we speak is not the language they associate with. They don't speak Yoruba, which is our native language. So they will go and come in and say, okay, who are we? Because they notice some things, like when we have friends or when we have family visiting, like when you greet people, you kneel down or you bend down to greet people, or when you call aunties and uncle or things like that. Those are some of the things that will let them know that you don't call any elderly people by name, which is part of respect. We let them know it's respect, not really culture.
Okay.
We don't want to make it seems like, it's a law. Because when you make something law, it sounds like something else, but it's a respect for them. And when somebody is older than you, you need to respect elderly, which the Bible teaches also. And we go from that perspective, not necessarily as part of culture. What they don't like is when you started calling everybody mommy and daddy, because they race against that. Say, how many mommies or daddies do we have? And we let them know, no, it's not mommy or daddy. So we let them know that outright. But aunties and uncles, yes, we teach them that part of the aspect.
Absolutely. This is a very some cultures is like how many mommies, how many daddies do we have? But I really like that the fact that not calling people by name is not so much of culture, it's actually respect to language. So I know you worked some in Nigeria before you came here and you worked here. Do you feel that there's some differences? What strikes you out about your work experience in Nigeria and your work experience here?
Well, my work experience in Nigeria, again, I think I'm blessed in some ways, because my work in Nigeria basically is working. I work mostly in a religious organization. I work within the Nigeria Baptist Organization in Nigeria. The only time I work outside there was through an organization from foreign country, from Canada, which seconded me to government states. I think that was the Ministry of Works in Nigeria. That's where I first get my experience of working in the ministry in Nigeria, or working with government in Nigeria, which I didn't enjoy, I didn't like. Even though I didn't work directly with the government, I was working through the organization from Canada, but because they were situated in the ministry building, and I can see the way government works, I didn't like the atmosphere. So coming to work here, my work experience didn't change at all, because working in Nigeria Baptist Convention is just like working in America, because they are set up is American way. Everything, and of course, my first manager was a missionary. So I work under missionary, I work under American system all through. And when we were married, I work in the seminary, which is still under American missionary. So I was never outside the burden of Nigerian setup as such.
So basically, you were already in America before you actually came to America.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And that's why I said I was really blessed. So maybe God has already prepared me for what is ahead of me that I didn't know. So when I came here, it wasn't too much a burden for me to know that working in America, you pay for you pay for what you work, or you work for what you are paid for.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. So I know God is a very big part of your life, but when you look back and you think, do you say, "Oh Lord, I saw why America was a choice," or do you still think, we really should have gone back?
No, I think looking back, I thank God that He kept us here.
Amen.
And the reason I say that now, I say that now looking back to what happened in 2006. Before then, we say, oh, maybe we should have gone back. But then I didn't say that. I always question, why is God keeping us? But after then I realized why He did what He did. Because if we had gone back and what happened to my husband had happened in Nigeria, I wouldn't have my husband today.
So that's one clear distinction I think you're
Yes.
trying to draw between the healthcare system. You're saying
Yes.
that the healthcare system here is miles apart from the healthcare system in
Very
Nigeria.
much so. Very much so.
Awesome, awesome. So how do you stay, I know this, but I have to ask you, Grandma, how do you stay connected with do you feel like, I know you were like in America while you were in Nigeria, and now you're in America. Do you feel that you're in Nigeria while you're in America? Do you have a lot of Nigerian life in America? Do you miss Nigeria, or do you feel that you have Nigeria around you even in America?
I think God has provided Nigeria for me in America in so many ways. When we first came, one of the things we first missed is the food. But God found a way of finding us, a way of finding a Nigerian food in America. We tried to make up, but lo and behold, before long, He provided food for people come from home and bring food for us. But before long, we started seeing Nigerian markets in America. And before long, when the church started, it's like Nigeria is in America already. So we didn't miss it much. So we have Nigeria in America. Now it's like, okay, we go to Nigeria once a while now to see what Nigeria is. And sometimes when you go to Nigeria, you don't want to stay as long as you will want to. You just want to go and visit and come back. Nigeria is a place to visit now, not to go and stay.
Okay, so that was going to be one of my questions. Like, do you think about, but before I go to that, let me finish on I was saying, because I know that, Grandpa is pastor at the African Evangelical Baptist Church. So there's a lot of Africans in the church. You get a lot of African outfits. I remember Torisha growing up, really her first exposure to African food was eating at home with you and Grandpa, and she came one day and she said, "Oh, is that okra?" I'm like, "How do you know what okra smells like?" But you see that the church gives you the community, you have the African outfits, you have the African parties, and it's just pretty much like you're in Africa, even though you're in Nigeria, even though you're in America.
It is. You see, sometimes you sit down and see the goodness of God. You see how God works. We say it, we sing it, but when you really sit down and analyze God, you see that God's plans are way for us. God make a way where we think there's no way. When we started this church, we never knew it's going to be like this. When he started bringing all these people from Nigeria, we never knew they're going to be here. But when this church became what it is today, it's not what we imagine, but God made it what it is in His own time. And so we just really want to thank God for, He gave us that name when we never knew it would be what it is today. And so we try not to make it as an African church alone. We want it to be a church where people feel comfortable, whether you are African or you want to see what Africa, or you just want to be in African congregation, not necessarily an African. Anglo can come in because we have some Anglo who wants to feel what Africa look like and want to be part of African church. And that is the purpose of the church, to welcome everybody that wants to go. If you cannot go to Nigeria, you can go to Kenya, but you want to come to African church to have the feeling of Africa, you are welcome into that church. And that's the purpose of the church, not necessarily for African or for Nigeria, but then as much as possible, we want people to feel the African way, how we worship, how we do things in a godly way.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. Awesome. Now, we had talked earlier on about the healthcare system, which was one distinction in terms of what one can expect in Nigeria and what one can expect here. So it's top notch. So after you came here, you were no longer working in the church, as it were. You worked with the government in the state of Texas. Now, how would you say the work experience, maybe not just from you, but from conversations you've heard about people, what would you say was unique about working here in the United States that may be different from a Nigerian experience to some extent, especially working for the Texas state government?
Well, when I work for Texas state government, I work for an individual or non-government people before, organization. I worked for an investment company for about 6 years or 8 years before working for government. Even in Texas here, it's a private company owned by individuals. So it's an investment company. I work for them before I went to work for government. Now, the difference is in a government setting, the bureaucracy in government is different from what you see in a church established government. There's no much bureaucracy in a church government, I mean, a church establishment, because you can easily walk in, because every morning in a church organization, you pray, you worship, you fellowship. And so that alone starts your day. But in the government bureaucracy, they may have been the one plan they've already decided before coming to work. You never know from day to day what you're going to find when you go to work tomorrow. You leave your work today, you never know. Tomorrow they can give you a pink slip. Tomorrow they can come up and say, oh, things have changed, this and that. And that's the difference from government's work, because you have to know how to play politics. Government establishment. Whereas in a church environment, the atmosphere is light and free.
Amen.
In a government establishment, it's like, if you know how to pray, just pray hard that whatever comes your way, God will help you to take it and accept it. It's as simple as that.
Wow, wow. So yeah, so your work environment is government. You have to be on your toes, and then the faith community, that people are depending on God.
Yes.
So you talked about going to Nigeria a lot, and I know I've heard from some people who are like, yeah, in our later days, we're going to retire and we're going to go back to Nigeria. So people have sent their money and have built their houses in Nigeria and they're planning to retire. What's your retirement? I mean, you're retired now, but it was like, what's the real retirement plan? Is there a house in Nigeria? Are you planning to go and spend your 12 like days in Nigeria? Or is this going to be it? And which one is it and why?
Well, I'm retired, but I'm not tired.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I don't know about retired and go and rest or go to Nigeria. Yes, we have a home in Nigeria, but when we go there, we are just going there to visit. I mean, I still have affinity to Nigeria, especially to my hometown, but it doesn't mean I'm going there to lay my head or to say I'm operating myself from here. And besides, I don't know what tomorrow holds. Only God knows what tomorrow holds.
Amen.
Who says, I'm going to die here, I'm going to die in Nigeria? So if God says, tomorrow I'm going to live here, so be it. If God says tomorrow I plan to go to Nigeria and God says go, I go. So for me to say I build a home, I'm going to go and this, well, for me, I live my day as the Lord leads.
Amen. Amen.
That's the way I say life, because I don't own my life. God owns my life. And whatever He says, wherever He leads, I go.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's been a very interesting conversation, and so many things have come out of this conversation. For one, I think one of the things that really stood out to me is that your coming here was really kind of like a community decision. And so the decision to stay was not entirely up to you. So you, from the get-go, your intentions was actually to go back home, but you stayed here. You were sort of already living in America while you were in Nigeria. So there wasn't much of a culture shock. There wasn't so much of adjustment to culture here to do when you came here. The most culture you kept in yourself was to give your children African names and teach them the culture, which wasn't so much a culture of respecting elders, kneeling down, greeting them, not calling people by name. You had to deal with work in the workplace, but just the difference between working for government and working in the faith community, where that is, the importance of healthcare, which made a difference because Grandpa may not have been here anymore if he had his health crisis while he was living in Nigeria. So being here was really a huge difference. And just as you had America while you were in Nigeria, you sort of have Nigeria while you're in the US, because you have the faith community where you have a lot of Nigerians around you, and you're able to, I believe you belong to the cultural unions, the Ogbomoso and the
Awe.
Okay.
Awe.
Yes, and so you stay in touch with them. Does that give you some satisfaction? I know that you were saying earlier on that you really wanted to be able to go back to the seminary to sort of give back, but since you weren't able to go and give back, what gives you some satisfaction? How have you been able to give back to the Nigerian community back home?
Well, we still do, because again, currently I'm the president of Egbeomobile Awe Descendants Union, which is Awe is my native hometown. That's where I came from. And I'm currently president of the Awe Descendants Union here. So we do currently take care of the people in that community, especially in this time of needs in Nigeria, generally speaking. So we try to send money to take care of the people's needs, to make sure they are in need. And personally, we do some fundraising and do some improvements even in that community. My father's property is being upgraded.
Okay.
Because my father was chief in that town while he was alive. So we try to upgrade his property to make sure it's useful for the community.
Okay.
And that is part of, what we try to do to make sure we are still giving back.
Yeah, and I remember you were saying something about sending some things to sort of a memorial for your father. You were doing some charitable actions there in the community.
There's a foundation in his name going on. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So it's not a case of out of mind, out of sight is out of mind.
No.
Yes, you still stay connected to the community, our community, and still committed to the people here.
Yes.
As we begin to round up, when you think about, coming here, are there some things that you say to yourself, aside from Grandpa's health condition, that definitely at there certain heights that you think, if he hadn't come to America, this could not have happened, or anything like that?
I do not think so, because if we hadn't come to America, I would say he would have been dead. The reason I say that, because his two brothers have passed, I believe, out of the same condition he had, looking back. And that is why I said that, because when his condition was diagnosed, that's what I asked the doctor, what caused his condition. And from the information we have from his two brothers, I think they had the same condition that
They were
were
not diagnosed in Nigeria.
not diagnosed properly. And even when they were diagnosed, I don't think they took care of it in a proper way. So that's why I said, if we hadn't come here, maybe he would not have been alive today.
But yes, that's so good. That's so good. That's so important. When you look about some other things, like, when I think about the cultural things as well, I mean, you were already living in America, in Nigeria, but do you think that there were some other things that, if like if you were in Nigeria, do you think you would have had the opportunity to be as exposed as you are going to work, climbing up, gaining, you went back to school, you got your MBA and did all of those things? Do you think that there were some unique opportunities that coming to America provided for you as if
I don't think so. I know when we were coming here, getting my education, two people told me when we were coming that you're going to America, you must have this, you must have this, you must have this, knowing fully well that we were coming with no scholarship. We came with no scholarship. Our friend here was the initiator of our coming to America in the first place. In America, he was here. He was the one who initiated our coming here. So we didn't get scholarship coming to America. So these people say I should, especially me. So they knew we were coming to college, and the college application was for my husband, even not for me at the time. But when we got here, initially, I wasn't even thinking of going to college. But then the first thing I did when we were in college in California was to ask myself, okay, how do I get to college? Because I didn't go to high school in Nigeria. I went to a commercial school. And in commercial school, you don't do science subjects. But to go to college here, you have to have science subject. So I went to high school in Riverside, where we were. And fortunately for me, I have the transcript of all my commercial school with me. I brought it with me. So I took it to that high school. I said, this is my high school, my commercial school transcript. I said, what do I need to get high school diploma? So the teacher looked at it, the teacher I saw looked at it, he said, oh, you have all the classes you need to get high school diploma. You have more than enough, but you don't have any science. I said, how many science hours do I need to take? He said, you need 8 hours of science classes. I said, okay, when can I start taking it? And I was pregnant with Ayo at the time. He said, okay, you can start taking it. And that's how I started taking classes in science in Riverside. So by the time I finished, it was time. When it is time to graduate, they asked me to come and work to graduate from my high school diploma in Riverside. Unfortunately, I was born at that time. I couldn't go to work. So they sent me my diploma.
Wow. I think that's interesting, because in those days, pregnant people, and I don't even know if it happens now, but in those days, pregnant people don't go to school in Nigeria. If you're pregnant, I think you get to drop out of school.
I mean, in Nigeria, they wouldn't even give me the opportunity to go to high school in Nigeria with commercials. I mean, of course, I may not even think of going back to high school in Nigeria. Because I was already working with commercial school. I was working as a clerk typist or admin in the seminary at the time before we came.
Yeah.
So I was working with my commercial school. So I wouldn't even think of going to high school. I mean, the only thing I tried to do when we were in Nigeria was to take GCE.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So for me to do that here in America, it's a
mm-hmm.
privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to get high school diploma, to have the diploma of American high school,
Mm-hmm.
gave me the opportunity to go to college here.
Wow.
That's what I used to apply for college, to go to college in America.
And you got that, went to college, got your degree, and then went back to go to your MBA.
MBA, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Great,
So when
great.
we moved to Texas from
Mhm.
California, I just applied to Dallas Baptist University.
Great, 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 great. Well, Grandma, it's been great talking to you. And I know you said the future is in God's hands, but as we do know it is. Any last words, anything about your journey? Would you say has been your favorite, other than Grandpa's health? What would be your favorite thing about having come to America? Like, if you had the chance to do it again, like, I'm going to come to America because of this particular thing. What do you like most? I guess what I'm trying to say. What do you like most about being American?
Well, what is good about America is the opportunity, which there's no limit to opportunity. Like I said, I'm retired, but I'm not tired. When I chose to retire in I think I retired in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I retired in 2012 from the States, where after putting 20 years of service there.
Wow.
So I decided, okay, I've already put in 20 years because they have this something of when your age plus year of
Mm-hmm.
service equals 80, then
Mm-hmm.
you can retire with all the full benefits.
Okay.
So I decided to do that in 2012. And later, a friend of mine had introduced me to selling books.
Mm-hmm.
By then, I've already got my license to sell real estate. So I have
Mm-hmm.
my real estate license, but
Okay.
it wasn't coming as I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't like sitting down at home. I'm not the type that feel comfortable doing nothing. I'd like to move around.
Mm-hmm.
So she introduced me to selling books in
Mm-hmm.
2016. And that's what I'm still doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like, in Nigeria, I don't think that's a viable option for you. In Nigeria, with my age, people will think you are old, shouldn't do this. And then people put old age on you so much
Mm-hmm.
that they make you feel you are too old to do this, you are too old to do that. They
Mm-hmm.
make you feel you're supposed to be holding your hands to move around, which I don't like at all. So being here give you that independence. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an independent person. I
Mm-hmm.
like to do things the way I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I enjoy that independence here, which I know I wouldn't have in Nigeria if I have to be in Nigeria. If I've been in Nigeria, I would be much looking older than I am now because the old age will have weighed me down too much.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't like myself.
Yeah, I know nobody here bothers about your age. You're going around and doing your thing.
Exactly.
Nobody's calling your age for you.
Exactly. So that's one thing I like here. You are free to do whatever you want to do, whatever you feel like doing. And God has been so good that He allows you to, He gives you the strength to do
Amen.
whatever He gives you opportunity to do. And that's one thing about God that He never fails to do.
Amen. Friends, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a phenomenal conversation. My guest today has been Mrs. Felicia Olaitan Omoni, also known as Grandma in this house. And we've heard about her journey from living in America in Nigeria to living in Nigeria in America to raising children to working and really enjoying the fact that she can be herself regardless of her age even here in the US. Grandma, any last words as we sign out?
Well, thank you, Lillian, for the work you do. And I just pray that as people hear this, they will learn something about not only living in diaspora, but learn about what God can do in their life for them. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you. Bye until I come your way again some other time. This is your host, Lillian Agbeigbe. You're listening to the Diaspora Dialogue series with LA. Join us again next time for another interesting conversation with another phenomenal guest. Bye.
Bye.
Ishe,